Welcome you guys to another episode of the Best Damn Coach podcast. We got double team today. We've got two amazing ladies joining us, and quick story, didn't know who they are. They delivered this amazing presentation at a networking event that I attended in California, and I felt like we hit it off, and I was like, they've got to come and bring their energy to the show because it was hilarious when we were together. I loved your guys' energy. So I'm so excited today to have Maria and Kristina from the Social Snippet. So welcome, ladies.
And we're excited to have you on the show as well, on our show. And yeah, I feel the exact same way. It's so amazing when you get in the room with like-minded people, how you're able to really like build community and build those connections. And look at us now.
Yeah, I love it, which is so cliche because we were attending the like-minded collective event with Inbal, who will be coming on my show soon as well. She's an amazing community member in the BDC, a framework builder graduate. Love her, love what she's doing. But one of the things that really kind of fired me up about you is the approachability of of the topic and how you present it, and specifically, your genius is Instagram, social media in general, but I think there's a way that you guys, this is just me celebrating you. So giving you all the praise is you make it realistic, and all the fears and all the internal language that I think so many of the coaches listening have around being present on social media, you kind of just like plop them on the table so we can see them, address them, and figure out how to create a solution around them instead of hiding behind them. And so I'm excited to dive more into that. But so celebrating you guys, job well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Of course. But you are a partnership, which I honestly don't interact that much with when it comes to business ownership. And I commend you guys because I don't think I would be a very good partner, just being honest about myself. But I'd love to know, how did you guys come into partnership, and share more about how you ended up right where you are now?
Oh my God, the longest story, but I'll try and summarize it for you. So we met a long time ago in university, actually. Kristina was an RA and I was a student. And then our relationship evolved in many ways from there. We were like in the same classes together. She, of course, like was sort of like supervising me in residence kind of thing. And then as we grew up and started like making our way through university, she actually ended up becoming my boss when we were both students. Like we were both student staff. She was my boss. And then she graduated, worked at the university. I was still a student and she continued to be my boss, which I think set us up just like so well. Looking back, it's like, God like planted each little, step of our journey to set us up to be such good partners. And it was so cool. It's just so cool to look back on it. But yeah, essentially, so that's how we met. And then we became really good friends, went on lots of trips together, went to all our classes together, and then went and, graduated, did our careers. So Kristina was working in higher ed, I was working in travel. And then when COVID happened, I was looking for something new to do. Obviously, travel wasn't happening anymore. And Kristina was looking for a side hustle because she just loves to work and was a little bored with her time. And during the COVID situation in Canada, we were very locked down. So anyway, then she started like a coaching business and was like, hey, do you want to be my little virtual assistant? You can just help me a few hours a week. We can make some social media posts. We can like try this little business out. I was like, yeah, sure. So we just learned together. We started posting stuff on Instagram. We had done like a little bit of freelance social in the past, but our education was not in social or marketing or anything like that. And we were just like trying things out, seeing what worked. We learned how to distribute and edit a podcast. So we did that. And then we were shocked at like just the impact we could make on Instagram. Like she had like a little website, but like other than that, we were making all of her sales on Instagram, or her workshops were all selling out, or coaching programs were selling out. And we were like, wow, you can actually do a lot. And she only had like a couple thousand followers at the time. So we were really blown away with just the power of it. And then that's kind of how we ended up here today, is basically people saw what was going on her Instagram and then started asking us if we could do it for them. And we eventually said yes.
I love that so much. I do have to ask like a tangent question, because you have such a strong background as friends, and
Yeah.
then you're in this professional relationship, which is the part that would honestly be a little scary for me if I was entering into a professional relationship with somebody that I adore so much personally. How do you keep that separate, or how do you manage to not like hate each other, or like what's the secret that I think a lot of people would be wanting? Because I think there's a lot of people that would love to do something with a friend because it would be more fun, but what's the secret around that?
Yeah, I
Christina, what do you
think
think?
it's hard because I feel like we're also very lucky. Like we kind of found each other, started working together, have built like this amazing rapport, which has been awesome. And I think Maria alluded to this earlier. Like I think we had a lot of difficult conversations at the beginning, like me being her manager, like a lot of that piece. I think because it was like kind of over a few years, there was a lot of opportunity. I think for coaching on both ends. Like I learned how to lead, and like Maria learned so much about working. Like we kind of were kind of in tandem there, but I always tell this story. And I don't know if Maria's going to come shank me one day for telling this too many times, but it's not about the Google Calendar. Don't worry. But it's I had somebody ask me one time. They're like, "Would you like?" They were like, "I'm like starting a business. Like, should I get a business partner?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. Like, hard no." And they were like, "What? Like, you look like you love Maria." I'm like, "Oh, I do love Maria. I love Maria so much." But I was like, "But you need to be okay with somebody saying no to you." And in business, like as entrepreneurs, like often that's not what we want. Like we get an idea, we get a dream, we get a vision, it's on our heart, we want to make it happen. But when you have a business partner, like, there's somebody telling you, like, hey, I actually don't like that idea. Or this is a better way to do it. Or they challenge you in such a good way. I am like a total manifesting generator. I have 100 business ideas at all times.
Oh,
Like
me
even
too. Me
yeah,
too.
and Maria's a projector. So she's like, please calm down and allow me some rest. And like, even this weekend, she's like, how's your weekend? I was like, I emailed a bunch of people about sponsorships because I had this like moment where I was just thinking we should do this. And Maria was like, yeah, I rested like a normal person because it's the weekend. So I think, I think there's an element of like, we have grown very comfortable with each other and able to say to each other, be very honest when something's working and when it's not working. But yeah, I'd be remiss to say if like luck and the universe didn't have a huge part in that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally see that, but I think you did nail it, the hard conversations and a willingness to have them and not take it personal when you do have them, right? It's like harboring that animosity towards one each other because it's kind of like a marriage, right? And my husband and I always operate with this one underlying theme that we feel like, I mean, we've been together nearly 26, 20 something years, 26, 27 years.
Insane.
I've lost count. But it's like, what are your intentions, right? Like underneath
Yeah.
it, the other person doesn't have bad intentions. The hard questions are actually to elevate you to a higher purpose. And when you believe that about your partner, whether it's business or spouse or even your children, right? I think that those hard conversations are growth opportunities for both sides.
The pieces that's been such a like, and hopefully Marie feels the same way, but has been such a blessing for us is I think underlying we have like tremendous respect for each other. So it's like even at each other's like worst, where we know all of each other's bad qualities, and like we're the first person to say like this isn't something you're good at, so I'm going to take that on for you, or like I know you're sitting with that, and that's like even today Maria has like a ton on her plate, and I was like this thing we need, I'm going to do this for you today because I like we need it done, and like you've got a lot going on. Like we meet each other where we're at, and I think
Love
that
it.
respect is so important that. And that's where I think a lot of business owners, like when you hear those like really hard breakup stories, obviously God forbid for Maria and I, but like we hear those breakup stories, they're so rooted in the fact that people are nitpicking each other and they've lost so much of that respect. So I think Maria and I keep that at the forefront of like we're each other's number one fans. And so I think that helps bring it up. Maybe she's my number two fan. I don't know. Today's not the day we have to find out about it, but yeah.
Not live on the show right now, so let's just
No,
hold
no,
that
no.
for later.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk social a little bit, and I want to call something out that ticks me off that is like a major pet peeve around social media right to begin with, because I would love to know your thoughts on it. But I I believe 100% in the value of social media, specifically Instagram's where I hang out. It feels accessible to me. I feel great there. What I think and see, though, consistently, especially in today's market, is that coaches show up to that platform and they create this expectation of I show up and post, and the immediate return is clients. And so I see so many frustrated clients that come into my world and they're like, it's not working. I'm like, well, what's it? And they're like, well, I post and I've got no clients. And I'm like, well, pump the brakes, right? Social
Mm.
media is just part of your larger strategy, and they're usually missing what I call like the middle of their ecosystem, which is where do I take them and nurture them before they come into that pocket of potential client. And so you guys are experts in this space. I'm just curious, do you see the same, or what kind of myth can you bust around that? Because I really want my clients to have reasonable expectations of what social media is and could be. Obviously you sell from there, I sell from there, but that's not the only thing. So maybe you can just share your thoughts about that.
Yeah.
I have
I'm
so
coming
many
with the
things.
heavy hitter first.
I have 100 things going through my head. So, Kristina, do you want to share first, and then I'll choose
Okay,
one?
like 100 things to say, and then Maria like brings it in. So I was gonna say this is something we see all the time, and I think that is the difference between people having followers and having a community. So if somebody is in a situation where they're just like posting and ghosting and they're expecting followers and they're expecting their followers to buy, they're not actually having a community. They're not nurturing people. They're not making those connections. They just have that number growing next to them. So we've seen clients who have had, 500 followers have, six-figure launches because they've been nurturing a community. They're talking to people in their DMs, they're connecting, they're asking their ideal clients what they want to see. They're really tailoring their message and treating it as like a marketing strategy, not just like, I think because we see so many people online who are like, oh, I posted on Instagram, so I blew up my business and all of that. Like, we start to think that that is what's supposed to happen. And we
Totally.
know that's not the truth. So I think for me, when I hear that from you, Amanda, I know it's because people are focusing on followers, not community. And that's really our jam and our zone of genius, is like helping people think about it more as a community, as something you need to pour into in order for it to pour back. And pour into isn't just posting. Like, pour into
Ooh,
is
good.
nurturing those relationships. I know, Maria.
Love that.
Yeah, so good. So good. I was thinking funnel originally. That's like where my brain first went, because I think people think, oh, I'm just gonna, hi, I'm selling this thing, buy it. Why aren't you buying it? Why aren't you buying it? Like, that's not really how it works. And so I think, like, in the traditional sense of a funnel, of course, it's good to have like a lead magnet and then maybe a lower ticket offer and kind of like work people into a larger offer. But I think that can also be modeled just through the way you sort of operate on Instagram. Like, it's like you meet someone in real life and you're like, hey, follow me. And then maybe they follow you. And then you send them, like, you reply to one of their stories and like make that little first connection. And then maybe a week later, you like ask them something in the DMs. And then maybe a week after that, you're posting a story of like a free webinar you're doing. And you're like, hey, I would love to see you out at this. Like, this would be awesome. And so I think thinking of those relationships in the same way, where it's not like someone's just going to stumble across you and be like, oh, perfect. Here's $10,000, like, sold. Doesn't typically work that way, right? And I think that's, to your point, Amanda, why sometimes it takes longer, because we'll have people who have said, I've been watching you guys for 2 years and just saving up for the day that I can
Same.
afford to work with you. And we don't
Same.
know that person exists sometimes, right? So we're doing all this posting, it's not working. Meanwhile, there are people waiting till they have the funds to work with you.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I see that time and time again. I've even had people say, I'm going to work with you. I'm saving da 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 da, da, and then I'm going to be ready, right? And it, for me, what that does is just like gives me immense gratitude that people see such value in the work I'm doing, that it's literally like they're one of their savings accounts to invest in coaching with me. And that feels like a really big responsibility too, to keep pouring into, community over time. So I want to hit that word community, Kristina, because I think this is an important piece to not glaze over. Is, I think people think, perhaps, this is my assumption, because at least I did, is when we think community, we think being eyes on each other consistently. And we think Facebook group, we think live event, we think, maybe a podcasting community. I think community really exceeds that. And on social media, it is a large opportunity for us to build community. So can you just expand upon what you guys' vision is for what building community looks like on Instagram specifically?
Yeah, when I think of like the best community builders on Instagram, so the people we've seen, like especially when I think of it from a coaching perspective, it's people who like are building know, like, and trust with people consistently. So they are going after it in terms of like, they're not just like posting, 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 posting. They are in the DMs communicating with people. They know their followers by name. They're asking people what they need. They're serving in a big way. And I think that's the really great part. And I always tell people, like, when people are like, I have a small audience, like, I don't know how I'm going to sell. Like, I'm a coach, and I just like, I can't wait to serve people, but I haven't had my first client yet. And I don't know. I'm like, wow, this is such a gift, because right now you get to serve people. Of course, everybody wants to make money and you deserve to be making money for your craft, but you get to serve people on such an intimate level that you might never get back again. And I see that in my DMs now, where I get messages and I'm like, oh my God, that was from 4 weeks ago. Like, that person asked me a question and I'm like, I feel so terrible. And I'm spiraling about the fact that like I haven't responded to that person. But I look back on those days when I had 2,000 followers, 1,000 followers, 500 followers, and people asked me a question and I was able to answer it and I was able to over deliver. And so I think, like, remembering what season you're in and building community around that. When your Instagram grows, your social media grows, and your community grows, you're not going to be able to give that same intimate touch. So really trying to figure out, like, how do you make your community feel like they're part of what you're doing? How do you show them behind the scenes? And really funneling people out of social media into your platforms, whether that be an email list or a community, that's great. But I think when people, you're so right, Amanda, when people think community, they're like, I need a Kajabi, like I need a Facebook, like I need to do all these things. And I'm like, no, your community are these people. And no matter what season you're in, there is a way to serve them.
Yeah, so good. I I as you were talking, the other, I think, incorrect expectation is that you called it posting and ghosting. Maybe I've heard that before, but it just really landed with me. Is like, I post, I leave the app, and sometimes I show up in stories, sometimes I don't. But I kind of liken it to podcasting. If I produce consistent episodes and then go 3 weeks and there's no show, then my audience loses credibility and trust in me that I am an expert and I have consistent content. And I think the same is true of Instagram. Is we want, if we're about to hire somebody, and you don't have to be in the business space, right, for this to happen at all. Because sometimes I think coaches are like, oh, it's so much easier if you're selling B2B. Not true. But what you have to remember is they start to set an expectation. When they start to cast a vision on you as an expert, they are expecting that you show up consistently to support them. And so if you post and then go away and then you have a story around, I don't have enough likes, it's crickets or whatever, and then 2 weeks later you decide to show back up, then you're really kind of, I think, digging yourself a little hole. I'd rather you not worry about building, I'd say, grid content, but at least show up in the stories consistently so that you have that really intimate interaction. So I'm curious, do you guys agree? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. We are, like, famous thing is done is better than perfect. We love messy action. And I am like the number one culprit of the, like, this Instagram post needs to be perfect. I'm going to spend 20 hours making it. And then, you post it and like 10 people like it. Like, you only need to do that a few times before you realize that, like, sometimes the posts you actually spend the least amount of time on, put the least thought into, or just kind of throw together at the last minute are actually the ones that are the most successful. And I totally agree about consistency, Amanda. I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves to be like, oh, I have to post twice a day in order for my thing to grow, and I need to make 1,000,000 reels and all this stuff. Being consistent doesn't mean posting every day. Being consistent means posting consistently and creating a schedule and a system where, like you said, your audience can rely on you for good information, for high quality stuff, especially as a coach. If they're looking for like a high quality coach that's going to bring them to the next level, is a high quality coach is going to bring them to the next level flaky and like inconsistent and not offering value sometimes and then not offering value. So I think those things are really important to consider when you're thinking about your social strategy, but also like lowering the bar a little bit. Like, things don't have to be perfect. If your optimal time is 12 o'clock and it goes out at like 2:30, all good. It's better to just get it out there. We find this all the time. People get stuck in that paralysis of like trying to perfect things, and we're going to perfect things. Like, things are never perfect, and social is an experiment anyway. So just start getting stuff out there, see what's working, see what's resonating with your audience. And the community piece is so big to tie it back to that, because you need to be talking to your audience and asking them what's resonating, what's working. Of course, you can see that in the analytics, but be having those conversations in stories, in the DMs, asking people to vote on polls, all that good stuff, so you can actually understand what they're thinking and what's resonating with them.
So good. I as you're talking, I immediately go into growth. And so something I've done, I think it's been close to a year, if not more, like 6 to 8 months. I don't know. I should have probably tracked the date I started, but as soon as I have new followers, so I do this strategy every day. I go in and I have like a template that I keep in my notes app. I somewhat customize it. I welcome them to the platform. I don't have ManyChat do this yet because I do like want to have it personalized, day of the week, their name. And I'm just like, hey, Kristina, happy Tuesday. I saw you started following me. I'm so pumped you're here. I'm curious, how do we get connected? And that was really an experiment on my end to see how are people really finding me. And I'm not that I'm shocked by this, but about, less than 5% found me through my content that was directly curated on Instagram, right? So they weren't like, they didn't just see my reel randomly and come follow me, or, occasionally it was like a suggested from Instagram. But more often than not, the way they found me was through being on other people's podcasts, teaching in other people's communities. Maybe my podcast, came over, one of those elements, or it was me going out and intentionally creating conversation in somebody's stories, which is probably like 40% of the time. And this is like that under the iceberg kind of part that I think coaches don't really recognize is happening. So I'm curious, what do you guys teach around that, or how do you support your clients to have greater understandings of kind of the under the surface stuff that's happening for growth?
That people get really wrapped up in the analytics, and something that Maria and I always say, and we talk about this like in our community and stuff as well, is like anytime something happens on Instagram, just say that's interesting. Like, do not add like any kind of weight to it of like, oh my gosh, that was so good, look how that reel performed. Like, we have had reels perform, like, you know, for one of our clients, I think they had 40,000 views, not one follower from it, not one. So that literally means nothing, like in my opinion, right? Like that doesn't add any value to their business other than a vanity metric. They have had other reels perform with 500 views that have caused like 6 or 7 inquiries, right? That's way more important, right? So these are the things to think about when you're looking at your analytics and you're looking at like your growth strategies. Like, I mean, I love what you're doing. You know, you definitely want to like track it, but like, I love what you're doing where you're saying like, I'm trying to figure out like where people are coming from, and then I'm going to maximize my efforts there. So for me, my feed is not really like, it's like, I don't know, Maria's so particular about her feed in the best way. Like a bunch of AI tools came out and I was like, Maria, we are going to use all these AI tools and we're going to chop up all these podcasts we are on together and we're going to post 5 times a day and we are going to like blow up. And she's like, we will not be putting any of those on my feed. Those aren't cute. And that's a no from me. And, but I'm way more like, if someone tags me in something, I'm just going to repost it. Like, I'm just happy to do that kind of stuff. Right. So, and I'm like the queen of messy action. Maria's the princess, but I'm certainly the queen. I will do things and I just want to see like what happens. So I think it's always about that experimentation and seeing what works, and then like success leaves clues, right? So if you're spending time, Amanda, like engaging in people's stories and that works for you, that's awesome. And that's a great way for you to continue. That's my nightmare, because I'm like, if I went and I started doing that and then those people started responding to me, that would cause me so much anxiety in the DMs. Like I don't want to be DMing with people. So there's this like, that's not my way of building rapport, but what works for you might not work for me in growing my audience. And I know what works for me is collaborations. Is like, I know someone will post in their story about a piece of my content or a podcast episode or something, and I'll see an influx of followers from that. So, okay, that's great. And that works really well for me. So I think it's about finding those things and really leaning into them. And because they don't look the same for everybody.
Yeah, good. I love, Maria, you said it earlier, and she just doubled down on it, that social is an experiment. And I think we get lost on that opportunity. And I think this is business in general. I think you guys would agree that we do something one time and the expectation and reality gap is really big of where we wanted it or thought it should go and the reality of where it is. So we just shut it down. We host a webinar and it doesn't convert immediately. We're like, man, I'm never doing that again. And we end up spending so much time in new content curation or new idea curation that we lose opportunity to actually ask yourself that high level question, like, oh, that's interesting. What can I learn from that overall?
Totally. Yeah. And then we've even made this error too. Like, and I don't know, Maria, if you want to speak to this more, but it's like, that's been a piece of our journey, has been us posting something and it not doing well and us being like, oh, like, why didn't that go well? Like, we put in so much effort, or like, hey, we wanted to host this and nobody wants it. Like, why don't people want this? Oh, we did this and this oversold and we didn't realize how many people wanted to do this. Like, that's been such a big part of our journey. And that's why I think asking the questions, like actually asking our ideal clients what they want from us, especially in a coaching space. When I was selling coaching myself, which is like now a distant memory, but like when I was selling coaching, it was like gangbusters people were buying from me, but it was because I knew exactly what people needed. Like, I used the language that they were using. I like was very particular with my offerings. I knew that I wasn't selling to business owners. I was selling personal development coaching. So I was selling to the average bear, right? So that person's not going to probably invest $10,000 in a program, right? Even though that was the like rhetoric I was getting from people. So I had to discern what my ideal clients needed. And I did so many top of funnel activities. Which I didn't know that's what they were at the time, but like I had a book club, like I had all of these different things that actually were really successful, but really like not even financially, but about building community, because these people were building know, like, and trust with me. And these things were happening off of social, right? So you can get creative with what your social media experience looks like, because it doesn't have to look the same for all of us.
Yeah, good. So good. It is different. So let's go tangible because you guys are the gurus of this. And let's talk to the coach that is just starting out or has maybe been trying to start out, and that internal dialogue, like things feel like they're not working, or I don't know, somewhere in that realm. Then what's the next best step tangibly? Where would you say, in order to leverage Instagram specifically to create growth when they don't yet know what's working for them necessarily? Where do we start?
So many thoughts. Okay, I think start anywhere. Like just start is basically it. Start, period. That's it. Do something. Do anything. Whatever you can like muster up the courage and whatever you can do, start trying. One thing I think did really well at the beginning that helped us a lot is just those continuing to have those conversations with our audience. So like Kristina mentioned, we would literally put up slides being like, do you want a retreat in July? Yes or no? And everyone would vote no. Or one time, like no one voted in the poll. We were like, guess we're not doing a retreat. So just like Christmas face.
Yeah, totally.
Just be okay with it being messy, like we're talking about. But I think a helpful way to think about it, and you alluded to this, Amanda, but it's like having Instagram be like your little home base where you kind of invite people to come hang out with you. So in my mind, it's not really realistic to be attracting tons and tons of leads, like growth on social, unless you're spending like hours a day doing the content. If you're not, which these people we're talking to are probably not if they're just starting out, you have to go get that growth elsewhere. So join a mastermind, teach in someone's community, go on a podcast. I don't know, go to, we host, if you're in Ontario, female networking events. Like there are so many places you can find people, and just find those people and then bring them back to your little Instagram home. And in that Instagram home, it gets to be fun, right? So I think my main advice is just like, let perfection go, have fun with your content, provide value, talk in a language that your ideal audience understands, and then kind of go out in the world, whether that be virtual or in person, and bring people back to your home.
It's so good. It is that, again, that's like the under the iceberg strategies that exist, again, is understanding that there's like a starting place for sure that can exist outside of it. To double down on the next question, I would say is, what if I have like analysis paralysis around posting altogether? What if there's like, I don't know how to create content, I'm feeling stuck, what will people think? I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are from there.
Do it. It's like doesn't resonate, right? Like it's like I don't
Yeah,
know
it's like,
how. Like I literally don't know how. So it so I think it's like remembering that you were once a beginner in whatever it is that you're passionate about, and that this could be something that is that you could be passionate about too. I think it's about starting simple. I would not recommend downloading CapCut and making like really, really intense reels as, step one. I would say like post a picture of your family, post a picture about your why, like share why. Like people buy from people, like people are going to want to hear from you, like why you're doing what you're doing. And something I love that people say, because I think it's one of those like business sayings that gets passed around and it's probably like Gandhi or something, but it's like no one who's doing more than you is judging you. And so
mm,
if you're worried about like friends from high school, and you're worried about like, and sometimes it's closer than that. Sometimes it's worried about, we've known people who are like, I'm scared about my husband. Like, what's my husband going to say? Or, what's like my best friend going to say? No one who is doing more than you is going to judge you. And I look back on that season of like us getting started, and I
so
can't
good.
even believe that I would have let that stop me. So I think it's like really thinking about like what you can do, and just starting even small and seeing what works.
Yeah, that's so good. Something that we say in the lab in our FBL is your current vantage point makes you perfectly suited to serve your client,
Mm.
who is a former version of yourself, because so many of us are serving our old selves in some capacity. And so we forget that we went on that journey. We've been in the mud. We know what it's like to solve that problem. And most importantly is we have the empathy and the compassion to know what it's like to be in that place. And our clients want to know that, right? I remember like starting out, right? I was in the health and nutrition space, and I had lost 75 pounds and kept it off. So I knew what it was like to be in an uncomfortable body, and, the you know, the struggles I had being intimate with my husband and fitness and all these things, right? And that makes me a different kind of coach for a person who's hiring a 19-year-old personal trainer that's been fit their whole life, right? And both are wonderful. They're for different people though. And so I think posting that content is like, let's not forget that the life experience we have, to your point, you guys talk about like unique gifts, right? That's so relevant to tapping into when you're creating content. So any thoughts or advice you have around just leaning into our gifts or any element of that?
So true. I think
Yeah.
I love what you said. I love what you said, Amanda, because it's like the parts of you that you maybe want to hide on social, or that you're like, this part's not perfect, maybe I'll just tuck this away in the corner, are actually the things that are going to attract your ideal client to you. And like the space that you are in right now, and the exact like space in your life, the things you've been through, your experiences, your way of seeing the world, whatever you want to call it, your human design, like all of these different things position you differently than everybody else. So it's the most important thing in my mind to lean into those things. And those are the pieces that your ideal client is going to say, me too. I can relate to that. They're like me. They can help me. And thinking of it as a past version of yourself, I think is super helpful. But I think it's a lot about letting go of any shame around those pieces of yourself that maybe you weren't so proud of, or that you aren't so proud of, or that you think are weird or quirky, or those are the things that make you authentic and the things that people connect with and really get them like bought in on you. And I think that's what Kristina did such a good job of in her coaching business, and why people were so attracted to her. She was just so herself. Like you knew what you were getting. It was right there. So authentic on right? So I think that's the most important thing. And also like make it easy on yourself. If you are like, it gives me all the anxiety in the world to like record a story, then post a selfie and write the text on the screen. Like it doesn't have to be
true
in the beginning. Like just take small steps and make it easier for yourself to get there.
I love that. Of course.
Just thinking about coaching in particular, and especially since that's like my original OG biz. One of the things that I love about coaching is that not everyone wants to be coached by everyone. And so when you show up as your most authentic self, there's someone out there that does not want to work with you. But there's 100 people that do, because you are the way you are. So I can think in particular, I won't name names, but I know somebody who's an extremely polarizing coach. Extremely. And every time they post something, a piece of my soul is like, ooh, like, but they make millions. They make millions and they're doing great. Right? Because people actually love that. I don't love to be challenged in a way that's like, like ass kicking, like I'm going to like, I'm going to make you rise kind of thing. Like but I'm much more like, I want like the soft approach. Like I want you to hold me while you coach me, And so there's going to be people who are going to be so attracted to that, like, that hard ass, like coaching style. And someone else is going to be so attracted to the softness that you come with. And social media is a great way for people to like see and test you out. So however you are in your most authentic state, it is your responsibility to your clients to show up that way so they know what kind of coaching they're buying.
Totally. And I mean, I'm going to even add one more layer to it because it's so good. What both of you said is it also is an early headache saved, because if you show up on social media as somebody you are not in order to satisfy what you think you should, then what ends up happening is you do attract the wrong clients, and then you're in a coaching container with them and you end up being like, oh, what the heck? I missed these red flags. And you didn't necessarily miss them. It's that you aren't showing up as yourself. So if you go to start sharing a value or a belief with them, you start to see the conflict, or they share their value and belief and you're like, oh, that's like doesn't resonate with me, then you're not doing yourself the service, and you end up getting into a messy contractual obligation where you're like, do I fire the client? Do I keep them? And so it really saves you a huge headache if you front load the authenticity instead of trying to claim it on the back end.
So good. I was just thinking that.
Oh, you guys are amazing. So much good value. And I would love for you to speak more to like the name Social Snippet. What does that mean? How do you serve your clients? Where can my people connect with you more too?
I laughed. It literally came out of almost thin air. Like someone suggested it, and we had this vision for our social media agency, and they're like, "Why do you call it the Social Snippet?" And we're like, "Great, that one works." But now we're spiraling about it because we do podcast management as well. So we're like, are we the podcast snippet? Do we just go online business snippet? But Social Snippet is where we're at. But I'll let Maria tell you where you can find us.
Oh, where can you find us? Instagram, obviously.
Hello. We'll drop their Instagram handle right in the show notes.
So we are at the Social Snippet on Instagram. And then if you go in the bio there, you can see Kristina and my personal Instagrams where we spend most of our time.
And how do clients work with you now?
Oh, so many
So we have
ways.
work with us. We have our done for you social media management. We have our done for you podcast management where we manage amazing podcasts and we kind of bring those to life. And then we have a new offering, which is our Instagram business club. It's igbusinessclub.com. And Amanda, for your audience, if they use the code welcome, they can get their first month for $1. But it's an amazing place where they can get templates, and we try to teach on all things Instagram and make it super accessible for folks.
Oh, that's good. I know my audience will be pumped for that. So thank you for extending it. And you guys, I'm so glad we could connect. Thank you for sharing your light and sharing all the good, tangible stuff, which is what we love around here. And I am grateful for your time. So thank you.
We love you. Yeah, excited that you're in our circle.
Likewise.